Hello, everyone. I know folks are logging in, getting situated. We just wanted to thank you for being here. My name is Dr. Julie Shaw, founder of Hello, I'm Grieving, and also LA resident. I want you to go ahead and in the chat. I really want this to be interactive today and allow you a space to interact as you feel comfortable. And go ahead and put, the typical where you're calling in from. Would love to see what's bringing people here, where everybody's coming in from today, because I know there are people that are here in LA and there's also people that are not in LA at this time. So I just want to honor that. As we start today, again, I introduced myself, Dr. Julie Shaw, founder of Hello, I'm Grieving. And I have a great panel that we will be engaging with today, and we'll be dropping all the knowledge and sharing their own experience and their connections to LA as well. So I'll kick us off with Darnell. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Darnell Lamont Walker. I am a death doula over most things. I'm also a children's television writer, which sounds sometimes kind of strange being both, but they have so many things in common. And I'm just glad to be here. I've been working in this space and the grief space, the death space, officially for about 10 years, unofficially since I was about 9 years old. And so anytime I can hold space and help people, serve as a bridge to help people get from where they are to where they want to be, I jump at it. And so thanks for having me. And I'm just glad to be here with you all.
Thank you. And Erica, can you go ahead?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Erika Lim. Um, I'm a death doula here in Los Angeles. I live in Glendale. I see a lot of people in Glendale, Eagle Rock, in the East Side. Um, yeah, I've been practicing as a death doula for about 4 years now. What I really enjoy about this work is the intercultural bridging, intergenerational bridging around death and dying. How to open up these conversations with our elders, also across cultures, because there's that conversation's always evolving as our society does. And so to be able to be here and be together, I loved what Darnell said about like sort of a bridging of disorientation into reorientation a little bit. I think that's a really powerful image for why we're here today. There's a grieving process happening. And so we're moving through this sort of disorientation from big change into what is becoming. So I'm happy to be here with you all. I'm really grateful for Dr. Julie and for Reimagine for bringing us all together. Thank you.
And last but not least, Gracelyn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gracelyn. I'm the co-founder of Luna Peak Foundation, and this is a local 501c3 nonprofit, and I run it alongside my aunt. And what we do is we help show people that they're not alone through the isolating experiences of cancer and also grief. And the way that we do that is typically through photography and through creating books and inviting people to share their multicultural stories and to help diversify the spaces as well. So that's a little bit about what I do for my day job. And also I'm from the Pasadena area. I'm also a death doula. And I'm excited to be here with you all today. Thank you all for showing up. And thank you, Dr. Julie, for inviting me into this space.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So you can see that there are these connections and again, these bridges that's been mentioned in this theme that's coming up. Because I also wanted to bring these people together because they absolutely have a perspective on how, and I love Erica, how you said that, this becoming. And for us to come here collectively today to do this in community, to talk about how we're grieving our community, how we're grieving pieces of ourselves, pieces of our homes, pieces of our community. What better way for us to do this in community? I've always said that we heal in community, and I think we're seeing that. And I think it can also be very confusing for folks at this time with a lot of the different emotions that are coming up. And I love to give the definition of collective grief because I think when we have the language to define what we are experiencing, it can really help in certain situations. So as we're collectively grieving, that this might be the sensation, the feelings, the emotions that you're experiencing as a group of people, as a community, even, as a nation, that people are witnessing this and you can collectively grieve, even if you are not in that city, that even if you are not a part of that community, even if you do not know anybody directly affected, but we are all witnessing something that we have not witnessed before. And I think that's a lot for us to take in. So this is one of the reasons why we wanted to bring everyone together today and offer a space of community for us to be open and vulnerable and share. And then I also wanted to bring in anticipatory grief, that even as we're collectively grieving, we may be experiencing anticipatory grief of grieving preemptively of what else will happen. What are going to be the other things that we will experience because of this big loss that we're experiencing, whether it's personal or as a community? And we're already having discussions of the repercussions of everything coming from the fire, which can cause these senses of anticipatory grief. Right now, I know all of you are coming from all over, and thank you for putting that into the chat box now. I would love to kind of level set and see where people are at emotionally and what you're feeling. So in the chat, if you can drop 1 to 3 words, whatever feels good to you, about how you're feeling right now, about what you're experiencing with the fires, what you've been experiencing, witnessing, everything going on around you. Thank you. Thank you, Sophia. And this way we can see as a community what we're all experiencing together. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Carrie. Frazzled, coming out of numbness. That's a good description, right? Like there could be that numbness in the beginning, and now how when we start to come out of that. Enraged. All of these. Thank you, everybody, for being so open and willing to share. Tense, anger, lost. And I also want to create a safe space. If there's anything that you want to send directly to me, you can. I just want people to feel comfortable to share. Air quality, yeah, right. These are like the secondary losses that we might be experiencing, like the loss to even go outside, um, and feel that fear associated with it. Thank you. And I could see our guests reading all through that too. So I wanted to open it up to our panel. I'm going to open up a few questions to them. And then again, please feel free to engage in the chat. If anything that we say resonates with you, please let this be a space where you can offer up your experience, your connection to this, how it's resonating with you, for you to be able to help process in your own way as well. And I do want to offer up, as time goes on today with each other, that there's going to be time for us to share and come off mute, because I do want to give people the opportunity to do that as well. So I want to start with Darnell. Darnell, you're currently traveling right now, but have many connections to LA. And watching this from afar and being connected to LA, as you are, what has this experience been like for you?
Oh man, yeah, it's been of course, emotional, heart-wrenching experience for me. I lived in LA for 10 years, a little over 10 years. And even in that time, I served on the board of the NAACP in Altadena. And, doing that, I mean, I built, really deep connections in the community. I still have so many folks who still live there. Many people that I love have lost their homes and their belongings in these fires. And so it's devastating to think about the memories and the pieces of their lives that are now just gone. I know I had friends who, of course, they evacuated and they were scared to go back and even see if it was there. And some who just went back to see if their home was there because they weren't ready to find it out. And so just talking about anticipatory grief, right? Like all the grief was wrapped up in that. And so for me, from a distance, there's this sense of helplessness, but also like this overwhelming desire to be present for the people who are grieving. Because it's not just about the loss of things, but it's about the loss of, security and familiarity and the spaces where many of these lives were built, and even parts of a life that I've built for myself, even though I'm not living there anymore. So much of who we are, is in a lot of the places where we've been. And so, just thinking back to like some memories I formed in one friend's house that's no longer there. And so it's wild to even think. And I remember just watching, you hear it on the news, and being in LA for that many years, and there were always fires, right? But we rarely saw I've never seen a fire in LA. Like, I lived there for 10 years, and they'd be like, oh, so and so's on fire. And so even this one was like, ah. So I jokingly texted a friend. I was like, oh, is it a fire we can't see, like all the others? And she's like, no, this is real. And immediately I was like, oh. So then I started making phone calls, and then it was like, oh, I can't get there though. I can't get there. But if I was there, what do I do? And so that helplessness kind of kicked back in. And at the same time, I've been moved by the resilience of the people that I've seen in the community. On social media, making the phone calls. I have one friend, Io, who's putting together care packages for folks who've lost so much. Amazing work. And so Los Angeles has just been a place where people come together in moments like this, and it's good to see that hasn't changed, that the communities that were there when I was there are still very much community and still very much coming together. And so, it's heartbreaking still. I get emotional just thinking about it, but it's still some beautiful things that are happening and will continue to happen. And I know I will be there soon. I will likely, and I fly back into California, and so that'll be one of the first stops, and just to see what I can do once I hit the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mhm.
think that helplessness is a huge word that um is resonating, and I see Summer had put that into the chat as well. This
Mhm.
helplessness of, and I've experienced that. That's the way that I've had to describe it, even if I'm only a few miles from where the fires have been. And
Yeah.
that helplessness of being able to see the smoke, see the helicopters going over, and feeling like, what can I do? And
Mhm.
feeling a need to do something. And I think there was a moment where I did feel like I couldn't take action, that I felt like
Yeah.
I just had to sit still and try to figure out everything that was flooding my mind and brain and even body, and feeling it in our bodies. And that's what grief can do as well. Grief can take
Mhm.
over your body and live in your body. And for that moment, you have to feel like, maybe I just need to take this pause before I
Yeah.
go into action. And that in
Yeah.
itself, you may feel guilt over. So that might
It's
be other
it's
things people
it's
are
hard.
experiencing.
Mhm.
Like that, because that pause could feel like wasted time to a lot of people. It's like, oh, those 2 seconds, I could have been doing something else with that.
Hmm.
But it's important. I think I'm glad you said that. I think it's something we need to realize. I mean, and not just here, but everywhere in our life. It's like that pause is necessary to keep going. If
Yeah,
if we're going to keep going, that pause, that breath, however you can get it, wherever you can get it, is important.
yeah, yeah. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Thank you.
And Graceland, I'd love to ask you, because I know you are connected and in one of the affected areas. Um, how has the community been coping, and maybe what have you been hearing from your own community? I mean, do you have to take off mute there?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of really beautiful things online. And I'll start with the positive there, because it is really heartwarming to see, even just driving through the streets in Altadena, since the fire is closest to where I'm located. My whole family was evacuated, Sierra Madre, Arcadia, Altadena, just a couple blocks away from the fire, really. And it's been beautiful, even just driving by and seeing just people with their pickup trucks and just handing out waters to anybody who's driving around, and people being comforted even on the streets, just you know, rolled over crying about their houses and everything. And I like how, Darnell, you even had the social media post about how things aren't just things. And it's so true. And especially for people who have known human loss and human death, these mementos are everything. And we've known many people in our close networks who have lost all of these mementos even, and it means so much more than just those objects. So we've kind of seen the whole spectrum. It is really heartwarming to see some of these centers not taking any more volunteers because they're overloaded with goods. And that's really amazing to see. But I think the vibe I'm getting from everybody online, at least in my network and on social media, is that we're here for the long haul. One, the fires are still going. The area is toxic right now, and we don't know how long it will be toxic. It might be even 1 to 2 years. Even for the people who did have their houses spared, they're not able to get back into their houses. A lot of them don't have power. A lot of them don't have clean water. And so you have people scattered all around still. So it is kind of vast and varied right now. We're seeing some hope from some people. We can't make any assumptions about how people want to rebuild. And I think that's a really big thing. I mean, we've talked with some of our friends and like, oh, we're going to redo our kitchen. We already have the plans ready. And it's been a week. So you have some people who are, really trying to rebuild. You have some people just sitting back and saying, please don't even ask me that question. So, you're getting the whole spectrum. We really can't make any assumptions. But it's been a very varied process. People are in such different places right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a huge point. As people are grieving, especially grieving, and we're probably going to make a lot of parallels between grieving the death of a person, because that's typically how people view grief. However, I think this shows and illuminates how vast grief can reach. That it can be that we are grieving, these things, which are more than things. They hold our memories, they hold our connections to things. And this grief is so expansive that I love how you're bringing in both, which is absolutely what I want to validate in this moment. And even reading what people are feeling, that there's going to be a huge spectrum, that there's going to be, yes, I am ready to do this and ready to keep going. And then there's going to be the other side where maybe I'm still in shock and I'm still very hurt and all of these things that I don't want to do anything. And I think as people are grieving their communities, grieving what they've been seeing, what they are directly experiencing, is for us, even as a community, to allow both to exist. That there is this space for the yes and to exist, and that all of these things are going to intersect in a way that it's not clear cut, that it's that like some people are going to be very, very angry for a long time, and some people may be ready to start a whole life over and see this as an opportunity, right? And so that there's going to be this huge, vast spectrum of how people are dealing with this and taking all of this in, because like you said, this is going to be something very long. And I'm very proud of everybody who showed up here today, because I feel like this is how we continue to grow and keep this top of mind. Because I don't know if people feel this as like, okay, a week or so has passed, and like, how do we still keep this momentum going? Because this will be a long haul. And I think as people grieve, that's what you typically see, is you see the initial, yes, I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to have this outpouring. And as the days go on, is there that drop off when there's still going to be many people in need of help and that support? Yeah. Erika, I do want to go to you, because I know we did have a great conversation the other day. And we spoke about rituals. And I know that you have this in your practice with rituals. And I want to know, like, what's your view on rituals in this healing process as a community or personally for people?
Yeah. Before we get to ritual, there's some things that have been coming up as I hear all you speak. And I want to talk a little bit about how the fires have affected me, if I may, just for a bit. And then we'll move. through into ritual. I've had friends that have been affected by the fires, but the thing that has been really interesting, and I'm curious to know if everyone else has had a similar experience, is that for me, I had to evacuate for a few days, not very long. My home is safe. But in that, my nephew's school burned down in Altadena. And, you know, when my sister-in-law told me this, she was just weeping, like just heart, like her heart was on the floor. And at that moment, I couldn't fully grasp it. It just, but I could see her grieving just be so immediate. How do I explain this to my children? How do I, you know, there's chickens and there's rabbits in that school. Like my kids are going to be worried about that. And like, how do you explain like animals that are dying from this? And so that moved me into a grieving process around the animals and the bears and the, you know, and it's interesting where your grief goes, right? It's interesting where who and what you're grieving at the time as information is coming to you. And so what I have found in this process is anytime I heard something of a loss and my heart feels it, at any point that I feel like I'm digesting it, something else hits, right? Like something new, another story, another, you know, the school sent out a website of all of the families affected from the school. And you're just scrolling and it's like 60 families, 70 families. And so it's another hit, right? And then you hear about just, yeah, you're starting to see things on Instagram of the devastation when people are coming back to their homes. And so it's another hit. And so there's just, the digestion is really difficult. And that's what I found. The digestion of like every single hit that comes, and then, yeah, the helplessness comes upon, right? Because you're overloading on like so much loss. And, you know, it's interesting as people were entering the room, I could feel it. I could feel the energy of why we're here together, because it's just stuck. It's stuck because we aren't having the opportunities to digest. And when you two, when Darnell and Dr. Julie were talking about that pause is, I think, the most important thing you can do in grief, because grief is a journey of adaptation, right? It's an adaptation from a disorientation into reorientation. And it's in that pause that we're able to see what direction to go in, how we can help, what gifts do we have, and how does our grief motivate us and guide us into what to do next, right? I think it's really easy for our minds to be like, oh, I need to donate and I need to like go into these centers and I need to, but like, what is our hearts? Like grieving is our teacher, right? Grieving is our teacher. It's the thing that's like, we're feeling such loss, and it'll show you what to do. Do you need a tantrum party, right? Like, are you fucking upset and need to throw things around? Are we ready for ritual yet? I don't know, but it requires that pause. It requires that inner listening to what your pause is telling you. Because there's no right way to grieve, as like Gracelyn was talking about. Everyone is just as your relationship to your homes and your things and the losses is so subjective, so is your grief journey, right? And so how do you listen into what the grief is telling you, how to guide you out of this? And yeah, I know, I like how Dr. Julie was like, things are not things, right? There are containers of our space. And when we're lost, like when we lose the container, our body, our form is loose. It's confused. And so how do we honor that, right? How do we sit with that kind of loss and figure out what is it inside of it? Like, we all are our greatest teachers. The grief is not a bad thing. Grief is not an illness. Grief is not a condition. Grief is the most natural response to loss, right? It's the most natural response to loss. Everyone feels grief. it's not an illness. It's not something to move through or get through. It's something to feel, because it means there's messages there that we need to listen to. And so when we move into ritual, around that question of ritual, my first question is like, is it important for you to have ritual? Is that, you know, is it the right time? Listen in, because we can create ritual, you know, we can create ritual around loss and things, and, you know, the things that we're losing, and we can come together. Like being together here is ritual, right? It's community. It's a need. It's filling a need, but it's born from a desire to be together. So my first question is, are you ready for ritual? And if so, what are the things that you want to ritualize and honor? And maybe that's your anger, right? It's maybe not the things yet. Maybe you want to just honor your sadness. Maybe you want to just honor your like just shittiness that you're feeling that you might not be able to explain yet, right? But it takes time. It really takes time, and we're here for the long road, like Gracelyn was saying. It's a process. It's a very long process.
Thank you. I know I got a lot out of that, so I know other people did too. It's just a beautiful way that you explained everything that you said. I know that I got a message, a question sent as you were speaking about not being able to comprehend the pictures of this devastation and feeling the need to go see it with their own eyes, and to be able to process that. And I think that speaks to what you said as well. Like, I had this question come up the other day on another session that I was at, and it was the both perspective, right? And asking yourself, are you ready? Do you feel like you're honestly ready to go back and to see, or if you need to validate it in some way? Because for some people that can be a confirmation. It's a confirmation of this is real, and also how our brain works, with the biology of this, is being able to make it concrete for our brain to understand. Because a lot of us are experiencing this thing where our brain can't comprehend things, and our brain, can be very powerful in that way of making up things and making it seem real. But for us to see it, to touch it, to feel it, to smell it, to really make that connection that this is real can be helpful for people. And for others, it may not be. So being able to understand, what do you have the capacity for at this time, because that can also change. And again, that's that fluidity of it changing. And this can be synonymous to when people choose to view a body at a funeral, whether they make that decision to view or to not view. And I think, this is personal for me. Like after the death of my sister, I chose not to view. And to this day, I do not regret that. And so this can be the same for people, or in parallel with this. And I also think if you do choose to go and to look, to also prepare, to have some type of plan set in place that you can say, okay, if I get there and I all of a sudden I'm not ready, then what can I do? Who do I want to have with me to support me on this? What can be my grounding? And as we're talking about ritual, what is going to be my grounding practice as well for yourself? So I hope that's helpful for folks who have been contemplating that and thinking about that as well. Even if it's, I still can't comprehend driving up PCH right now, and seeing everything, because I know there's tons of memories driving up that way, whether I surfed, across from the motel and the Real Inn and all those things, and I can't even fathom that those are gone now. So these are iconic places that I think other people are still trying to register and say, is this real? Um, and comprehending that, which also takes your brain time. It takes your brain time to make new synapses and connections. And I know I'm getting in the weeds with this, but this is what's biologically also happening with your brain as well. So give yourself grace in that. Um, I do want to turn to this portion to all of you. And so what each of our panelists have done is they've come up with a question that they would like to open up to all of you here today, to the community, to kind of have you all share and see how you are feeling and express what you need to express. I will say that if I need to cut you off, I do this with just allowing space for other people to speak and share the space. And I want to allow time for people to share as well and give you the opportunity to do that. Who wants to be first? Darnell, Erika, or Gracelyn? I can give you that option, or I can just tell you. Okay, we'll go with Darnell. I saw a head nod there.
Oh, okay.
And is
Yeah, I was nodding to say, yeah,
yeah.
just tell us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can I actually address something in
Go
the
for it.
in the
Yeah, go
in
for
the
it.
comment box though, real
Yeah, yeah,
quick?
go for it. Yes, yes.
So I see Tana, I think that may be how you pronounce your name. You said you want to help, but
Mm,
you traumatized yourself. Excuse me. And I think a lot of what you touched on, Julia, may answer some of that as well. I want to acknowledge how real and valid that feeling is. Wanting to help others, but feeling so traumatized and not sure how to do it. Because it can feel impossible and to take on anything more a lot of the times. And so sometimes the best way to help is by tending to your own needs first and giving yourself the space to heal and then process. And also remembering that helping doesn't have to look like this grand gesture. Helping can look like just holding the space, like we've been saying, or offering kind words, something as simple as that. And so, it may feel like too much to show up and go to these places to help folks, but sometimes the kind words may be enough for some who are just struggling to get through the day. So I just wanted to put that out there for anyone who may feel that way. And so, yes, going with the prompt, something for you all to think about. I just want you to think, in the midst of everything, who or what has provided you with comfort or strength? Who or what has provided you with comfort or strength in this time? And
Yeah,
that's my question to you all.
yeah. And feel free to type in the chat. You can also raise your hand so we can have you come off mute, and would love to hear from you.
And while everyone's typing, I'll say for me, and even we were talking over someone typing. Oh, sorry.
And I think I see Summer. Were you raising your hand there?
Oh,
Yeah, I
Oh,
perfect.
go for
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
go for it.
to
Yeah.
start, and I think I'm sure that this is very common here, but I think other people are the key, and also a key is I'm very, very grateful that I'm actually I'm a life coach, so I have a community of other coaches around me who one can know how to stay centered and support someone, and two, it's it's a globally, I know a lot of people globally, so I can reach out to someone who's across the country who isn't in the same danger or in the same grief, and reaching out to someone who isn't in the same space or grief as you can be hugely helpful, and I think has helped me to be able to get out of it throughout numerous occasions and be able to come back and help others.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, that's a good point, right? Is sometimes if we're both or whoever we may be talking to in that grief, in that deep grief together, it could be hard to kind of even see another perspective at times. So as you're talking about reaching to other people who are outside, can be helpful. Again, gaining that different perspective there. And I see other people. I'll leave space for anybody else who wants to come off mute there. And I think there's in your reaction button, um, you can raise your hand that way. I'm looking in the group chats seem to be a popular thing as well. I am in many of the group chats, and it's been good to see everything that pops. And people kind of keep you aware of how you can help in different ways, or if they just need to vent. That's another thing too. Um, yeah, check-ins, therapy, yes, as well. Thank you, everybody. These are all good. And it's good to see these and share these because it could spark something for you that might resonate, that can help with you as well. Amazing. I'll go ahead and I'll pass it to Gracelyn for a question that you have for the group.
Before I ask a question, I also
Yeah.
want to um, offer some really cool ways that people have been supporting in the community as well. My mom's best friend lost his house. And so something that she's able to offer, since we are in the same Eden area, was to make sure that when he did go back to see that concrete evidence of his loss and the loss of the container, as Erika said, she has offered to go with him. And I think that's such an amazing way that you can show up. And then for everybody who is virtual and supporting people from afar, that text message when you check in to say no need to respond is a really good way to start it, or to say no pressure to respond. And you'd be surprised at, the check-ins and responses that you get from that. And even just to say, hey, this is horrible. I know you're still going through this. This is really horrible. No pressure to respond. And sometimes people do want to vent, as you noted. My prompt for you all would be, if you have been displaced, if you've lost your home, or if you're still displaced from your home, what do you want people to know about your grief? And I ask this because in general, our grief is typically not asked about enough. So what do you want people to know about your grief right now?
It's a great question. Judy's got a great question. Yeah. I think it's a good question too, because like Gracelyn said, I don't know if people are asking it so directly like that, right? And then connecting it back to what Erica said is when we ask this question, it can allow us then to learn not only about ourselves, but from other people. And can you repeat the question again, Gracelyn? Oh yeah, there you go. If you have been displaced from your home, what do you want others to know about your grief? And I'll keep it open too. If even if you want, what do you want people to know about your grief right now that you are experiencing, even if you have not been displaced from your home? Okay. Thank you, Paula. Mm. Paula, how would you explain how it's wrapped into everything if you feel comfortable coming off of mute?
Hi.
Hi.
So, how it's wrapped into everything is the uncertainty, first and foremost, of just I've been living in LA for 2 years and doing my best to get established. And it just feels like it's already such a challenging city to
Mm.
come to as a new person, as an outsider, and to establish yourself. And it just feels like everything I've worked toward for the last couple of years was just washed away with that.
Mm.
And not knowing now, having not only housing insecurity, but now financial insecurity, because I'm displaced down to Carlsbad, where I was really grateful a friend could take me in for a couple of weeks, but that's starting to run out now, and just trying to figure out where to go next. I evacuated from Santa Monica,
Mhm.
and the fires were only like, I mean, you could stand in my alley and see the flames roaring through the Santa Monica mountains right from my alley. Like, it was just right there and that tangible. And I was only in the smoke exposure for 12 hours before I evacuated that night. And it took me a week to overcome the intensity of the symptoms and just the itchy burning eyes and the sinus issues, and even my ears hurt. Like, so it was just like everything that it awoken in, I think, something was mentioned about how grief can settle in, our issues are in our tissues kind of thing, where anything that was, unresolved trauma
Mm.
was reawoken during all of this too. And
Yeah.
yeah, just that feeling of being a refugee and not having a big sense of community here yet, and not having access to a lot of the same resources that other people do, and community and everything. So yeah, so what I mean by wrapped into everything, it's just like, the loss of appetite, the confusion, the anger, the frustration, the feeling like I don't have it as bad as other people, so I'm not entitled
Mm.
to the same
Yeah.
sense of loss and grief.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's,
Thank you.
it's not a comparison, but you can't
No.
help. I mean, we're hardwired to do that. It's like, well, it could always
Mhm.
be worse. And it's like, it's
Mhm.
so dismissive to think that way. But then it also feels so, I don't know, like entitled or something to be feeling my own level of grief and loss when so many other people have lost so much more.
Yeah. That's a big one. That thank you so much. This
Yeah.
is why I love it when you all share because it brings up so much for all of us. And you could see people are in the chat. They can relate to you as well. I want to bounce this to the panel if I saw some head nods from you all too. Um, if anything that you wanted to, especially Erica, I just saw you like really resonating with all of that. If you wanted to speak on anything that you heard from what Paula said.
Um, yeah, the head nods are like, Paula, tell your story, period. It wasn't anything but that. It's like everyone, I think the purpose of these spaces is to really open up space for people to tell their stories. Storytelling is what makes us move through things as a community, hearing people's individual experiences and then letting that touch us in a way that allows us to reflect upon our own lives and what is there. Like, that's, I think, the purpose of these spaces is for people to have ownership over their own experience so that we can all learn. And so I guess my prompt really is like offering open space for people to share what they're grieving, what they want to honor, their story about, what has surprised them about their grief, like anything that anyone wants to share, because
Yeah.
it's an important like space for medicine for all of us. So yeah, I'd like to open up the space in that way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Paula, for even helping us see a good example of that. Because I think everything you said, even that what resonated with me, I'll take this, and that's the power of sharing stories. It validates other things and other people, so that they feel seen too, is that kind of, and the word that's coming to my head is that privilege, right? That there can be privilege in our grief of saying, well, that and kind of playing with that. It's like, yes, I want to validate all everything that you said. And it's just knowing that you can honor that too, while also being able to say, yes, like it may not be as bad. However, my grief is still very valid and I still feel it very much. And the effects that it's happening. Okay, so I see, is it Mireya? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing names correctly as well. I see your hand. Go for it.
Hi. Yeah, I'll turn my camera on. I'm messy,
Sure.
but
It's
Michelle.
okay. This is a safe space. This is a safe space. Yes.
Hey guys. Maria, good to be here. Yeah, I was just thinking, Erica, in response to your question, something that's been surprising to me, or maybe I just wasn't conscious about prior to this immense wave of grief that feels like it's uh both macro and micro, right? Um, is that I constantly feel the need to change how I'm feeling. Like I feel that it's my responsibility to alter or fix or improve or better or and like I have such a hard time just allowing myself to exist as I am in a given moment. Um yeah, and I think that's mostly what I wanted to say. You know, another component of it that I've been experiencing personally is like a little bit of like self-centeredness where I think that I'm unique, even though like people have been dealing with these things for ages, you know? And I just like, I like reminding myself that while I feel alone and like my world is narrow and scary and, you know, chaotic, there's a bigger, broader world out there with lots of precedent for ways to move through things like this. And like my brain isn't the one that's gonna make it up. You know, people have done this work for ages. And I'm just like, sometimes I think my brain holds the world together, and it's just not true, you know? And I'm just grateful that I get the opportunity to like be like, okay, self, that's not true, you know? Anyway, thanks, guys.
No, thank you. I'm sure people have that feeling. And wait, I think you might have said that self-centeredness, right? And you got a follow-up question, like, do you feel guilt about that? Like, is that what you're experiencing with that too?
That's a really interesting question. I think I do, but I think more so what I've been trying to do is decenter myself
Mm,
from the work I'm doing because you know, there are people that have been thinking and writing and, you know, and working and organizing far longer than I have. And I, again, like I
mhm.
don't have to make it up. I think it's actually a place of hope as well. I think when I
Mm,
decenter myself, I'm able to make room for service and showing up for others and connection and those things that build community and allow me to survive.
got it. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, there's space for all of this. I think that's the thing with grief is I feel like grief exposes you to every single emotion like ever created or felt. That's how I feel sometimes. It's so expansive that sometimes when these new things hit us, we're like, "Oh, what is that?" And that's where you kind of play around with that grief and be like, "Oh, okay." And again, as we're saying, we have to feel it, experience it, so that we can make sense of it. Yeah. I'm looking the chat box is lighting up, which always love to see. And just experiencing this. And feel free if anybody else would like to share their story, what they're feeling, what's coming up for them, whether it's in this moment or stuff that they've been feeling as we've been witness to all of this. Mm. I'm looking at the climate change conversations. I think there's definitely a lot of that ripple effect, right? Of all these other things that are happening that have been kind of connected to the fires as well, and how that shows up. Yes, I see Carrie in there, a lot of other heavier things happening. And Marina, yes, I see your hand is raised. Go for it.
I guess I just wanted to thank you guys for having this. I'm not sure how I got on this list, so I'm really grateful that I found you. Um, I'm near the Altadena fires, in the San Gabriel, yeah, kind of about right outside of Altadena area. Um, I guess for me, I'm wondering the difference between fear and grief because I know for me, like when it all was going and happening, I was going down a lot of rabbit holes of like, oh, they're attacking us. You know what I mean? Like just my mind was just going to some really dark places of like creating like intentionality around it. And I could see yeah, it was just like And then I actually did evacuate to my mom's in Corona, which is about an hour east of here. And she was just very, like, her and my stepdad were very dismissive. And they were like, can you just take some? Because I was like crying, and then I was like, fine. And then I was crying, and then I was fine. And they're like, can you just take something for that? I have a Xanax. I'm like, I'm sober. Yeah. So, anyways, I don't know. I just wanted to share that.
No, thank you for sharing. I think somebody else had put in the chat, I'd seen something about family in there too. Um, in the panel, please, if anybody wants to take the question about the difference between fear and grief, please jump in. I don't need to be the only one talking here. I can leave you all space for that one. Oh,
Uh,
go for it, Erica.
what comes to mind, and the unifying factor that I find when working or being with people in grief is that like nothing is normal or how it was before. There's a shame that shows up of like, I can't get anything done. I used to be someone that can get everything done. And like, I have my checklist and I'm good at this and I know how to do these things. Or someone would be like, I just started singing. I just keep singing to my child that passed, and people don't think that's normal, but I just feel uh, um, um, an inner feeling to sing, right? And so, what I've been learning about grief um, is that it is complete disorientation. And fear will come up because of grief, right? And fear, like you never know what's going to come up. And I find that fear will show up, and each person, one person with grief is one person with grief. There's no, like, from what I'm understanding about grief, there's no real, yes, we can call phases, but no, like you'll never meet a thanatologist that's like, oh, and then you're going to want to sing after you lose someone. It's just everyone has their own process. And I think it's really honoring the process, honoring the fears that are coming up. How do you listen to those fears? What are they telling you? Do you believe them? Really kind of move into that so that you can accept what's coming up and allow it and observe that.
Yeah.
And I'll oh, go ahead, Darnell.
Okay. I think that was great, and also just want to say, like, I think in my experience, fear has been more about the future, where grief has been about the past, right? So, like, while grief could kind of pull us, while fear kind of pulls us into what might be, grief kind of grounds us in what has been. Um, and so there are times when they may overlap. Um, but fear kind of signals an action where grief invites us to kind of reflect and feel, and hopefully will lead us to some sort of healing.
Mhm.
Um, and fear doesn't do that in my experience,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
makes sense. Yeah. And I'll add, as they've both been saying, that it is a natural response. So
Mhm.
really validating that for people, like it is a natural response. Um, and again, going back to the brain can be very strong that whether it is a thought that you're thinking, your brain can also perceive this as a reality. And so it can still cause that natural fear response, which again, I'll go back to the biology. Your amygdala, your brain is hardwired to naturally react. And as Erica and Darnell have been talking about this reaction, um, that there is this reaction that's taking place, and fear is also there to protect you. So fear is naturally there to protect you in some way, and to alert you. So that could be alerting you to something, right? And I think again goes back to what can we learn from grief? And if fear is a part of grief, or it's a natural reaction, what are we learning from this, or what is it trying to communicate to us? The other piece you said with the family part, I a lot of dissent can happen within families because, or personal relationships or friendships, because of the judgment of how people grieve. or their understanding of how people grieve. So it's that's something to think about as all of us are navigating our personal relationships with others, is how are we judging other people's responses and how they may be interpreting or judging our responses, and knowing that our response is completely valid. Right? I also say this with a grain of salt of saying, as long as we're not harming others and harming ourselves. And so making sure that that is there too, and understand that they're doing their own thing, right? And maybe they don't have the capacity to help you in the way that you need to be helped or supported. And that's why there's communities like this, or being able to understand who is it that can be witness and help me support in the way, and being able to understand how we would like to be supported too, is something that as we navigate this all and it unravels, to help ourselves in that way. Yeah. Oh gosh, we are so close at time right here. It's been such a lovely discussion, and I know Andy has some things, and I love that what people have been putting here in the chat. Anna, I see yours here. Am I wanting to help because it will make me feel better, or will this thing actually help those affected? Um, Very valid. I think that's us questioning that what I'll just call our inner soul, our inner dialogue. But I also feel like the fact that you're thinking about that, like you have a certain awareness to where we can dig through that as well. I know I did want Erica, I know there was like a grounding exercise that you wanted to do before we sign off. Do we still have time for that?
Did Andy want to
Do you want,
offer?
oh yes, Andy, do you want to give us the resources? And I also think, Gracelyn, I think you had a link that you wanted to drop into the chat as well. Please feel free to, our panelists, you could drop any links that you want, how people can contact you. And Andy, go ahead and take it away before we
Yeah,
do
I think
our.
it would be nice for me just to do the more housekeeping kind of stuff and end with the grounding exercise at the
Okay,
end.
great. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Thank you. And first, Julie, thank you so much for reaching out to Reimagine initially to do this. And thank you for recruiting these wonderful analysts, Darnell, Erika, Gracelyn. Thank you all for coming. I'm pasting here in the chat just some upcoming Angelenos L.A. related gatherings that we're having at Reimagine, organized mostly by our community of collaborators like Julie. We've got a grief sanctuary by Mangda Sengwan Peng. That's to benefit LA mutual aid groups. We've got Jamie Morrison, who is from Santa Monica. She'll be offering a movement workshop, Mapping Grief in the Body, Grief Rituals for Climate Change by the Joyful Death Institute. We're going to have Dr. Julie Shaw again as part of a series on sibling loss. That's coming up in February. And also in February, Angeleno writer Sarah Labrie will be our guest speaker at our monthly Reimagine Candlelight Vigil. So please join us for that. Erika, I'll pass it to you now.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you all for being in this space together, for showing up, for creating, for co-creating. Very simply, as people kind of say, like, let's pray for water. I encourage and invite us all to be the water, right? Let's be the water for each other. Let's be the water to calm the fires. And in doing so, and being water, we say blessings, right? We say blessings of what we want for this future, for ourselves. What do we need for ourselves, for each other? And so I ask us all to invite you, if you want to close your eyes, and to really take that pause, and we'll take a couple breaths. And as you take these breaths, you think of what you want to pray or offer care for. So maybe it's a may I be happy, or maybe you're thinking of someone that's grieving their home right now and you think of them and what do you wish for them? So take a couple breaths at your own pace. And you think of that blessing that you have to raise the frequency of where we are together. And as you make that prayer, as you hold that space for that person, for yourself, for the things that have been lost, take a little time to transition into whatever's next for you, right? We thank you for being in this space.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Thank you for, as Erika said, being the water. And I hope that we were the water for you all today. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I know that Andy will be following up with this video as well. But please reach out to, and I'll say this to any of us, to Darnell, Gracelyn, Erika, or myself. And thank you for everybody who showed up today and to those who shared their story, participated, and just listened. And we hope this was helpful for you and that this was a great community to be a part of today. Thank you.